Have you ever wondered how security teams find vulnerabilities before attackers do? They don't go system by system checking everything manually. They use automated tools called vulnerability scanners to do the heavy lifting. In this video, we'll be breaking down what these vulnerability scanners actually do, how they work, which tools are the most common, and the best practices to get real-world value out of them. Let's get into it. A vulnerability scanner is a tool that automatically checks your system for known weaknesses, kind of like running a diagnostic scan on your network. It looks for things like missing security patches, outdated software, misconfigurations, and known vulnerabilities tied to CVEs, also short for common vulnerabilities and exposures. Instead of manually checking each device or server, a vulnerability scanner does most of the heavy lifting for you. It scans your systems, comparing what it finds against a database of known issues and generates a report of potential risks. These tools are often used by security teams to answer questions like, are we missing any critical patches? Is any software out of date? Or are there any misconfigured services that could be exploited? And while the scanner doesn't actually fix anything itself, it does give you the information that you need to take action, whether that's patching, hardening, or performing a deeper investigation. A vulnerability scanner helps you find weak spots before attackers do, and it's one of the first tools you'll use in a real-world security environment. So how do vulnerability scanners actually work? Most vulnerability scanners follow a simple process, but there's a lot happening behind the scenes. Here's a high-level overview of the steps. First, we have asset discovery. The scanner starts by identifying what systems are actually on the network. This can be servers, workstations, networking equipment, or in some cases, cloud assets. You can even point the scanner at a specific IP range or a set of systems that you want to scan. Once it knows what's there, it figures out what each system's running, like the operating system version, installed software, open ports, and services. And this process is called fingerprinting. Then comes the core task for vulnerability detection, comparing what it found against a database of known vulnerabilities like the vendor's vulnerability feeds or the National Vulnerability Database, also known as the NVD. This includes checking for missing patches, default credentials, outdated software, and insecure configurations. Finally, we have risk scoring and reporting. After scanning, the software assigns a severity rating to each finding, usually using its CVSS score, and it generates a report so you can prioritize what needs fixing. Most scanners also support authenticated scans, where you provide credentials so the scanner can log into the system to perform a more thorough inspection. This gives you more accurate results compared to unauthenticated scans where the scanner does not log into the system. You can run scans internally on your network or externally, simulating what an attacker might see from outside your network perimeter. It's all about visibility, giving you a clear picture of what systems are exposed and how serious those exposures are. Now let's talk about some of the most widely used vulnerability scanners out there, the tools you're likely to run into on the job or in hands-on labs. Here's a few commonly used products. First, Tenable Nessus is one of the most popular scanners. Nessus is widely used by security teams of all sizes. It's known for being easy to use, offers solid reporting, and covers a large number of vulnerabilities. There's also a free version called Nessus Essentials, which is perfect for learning and lab work, which we'll do in a later video. Next, we have Qualys. Qualys offers a cloud-based scanning platform that's heavily used in enterprise environments. It's powerful, scalable, and integrates well into vulnerability management programs. However, because it's a commercial platform, you're likely only going to see it in a corporate setting. Next, we have OpenBoss. This is an open source scanner that's part of the Greenbone Vulnerability Management Suite. It does have a steep learning curve, but it's a solid option for home labs or anyone who wants to learn more about how vulnerability scanning works. Another commonly used tool is Insight VM from Rapid7. This tool builds on Rapid7's Nexpose platform. It's a great option for vulnerability management programs and offers customizable dashboards, integrations, and works really well with their suite of automation tools. Every tool has its own strengths, but they all aim to do the same thing: help you identify and prioritize weaknesses before attackers can exploit them. You don't need to master all of the tools that I just mentioned, but getting hands-on with one or two of them, like Nessus or OpenVOS, is a great way to build hands-on skills. And vulnerability scanners are a great addition to any cybersecurity program. However, like any tool, they're not perfect. It's important to understand what they can't do so you don't rely on them as your only line of defense. Scanners may flag issues that aren't actually exploitable, called false positives, or they may miss real threats entirely, known as false negatives. No scanner is 100% accurate because they rely on signatures and detection logic. Think of a smoke detector. If it goes off while you're making toast, that's a false positive. But if there's actually a fire and it stays silent, that's a false negative. and can be dangerous. And some issues require human insight to find, like flaws in business logic or vulnerabilities in custom applications. Vulnerability scanners focus on known weaknesses, not complex attack chains or vulnerabilities software vendors don't even know about yet. These scanners don't fix the problem. They simply provide a list of findings for you to analyze, decide what's important, and take action to remediate. Without follow-through, scanning doesn't reduce your risk. It's also worth noting that vulnerability scans during business hours, especially authenticated scans, can cause some level of service degradation, or could even trigger alerts in other systems. That's why it's important to carefully consider when scans are scheduled and get written approval as necessary. And even running unauthenticated scans will only let you see surface level issues. If you want to catch misconfigurations or patch related problems inside the system, you need to either run authenticated scans that require you to set up access prior or use an agent-based scanner that's installed on the system. In short, vulnerability scanners are a valuable piece of the puzzle, but they're not a perfect solution. They work best when combined with strong analysis, remediation processes, and other layers of security. To get the most out of a vulnerability scanner and avoid common mistakes, here are some best practices to follow. First, scan regularly. One-time scans won't cut it. New vulnerabilities are discovered all the time, so it's important to run scans on a regular schedule, whether that be weekly, monthly, or after major changes to your environment. Consistency is key here to staying ahead of threats. We also want to use authenticated scans whenever possible. Using credentials allows the scanner to log in and detect issues it wouldn't see from the outside, like what software is installed, what version, missing patches, and misconfigurations. Unauthenticated scans only check to see what it has permissions to without credentials. And while it's still important so you can get an idea of what attackers would see if they performed a scan, it's not going to be as thorough. And when you perform scans, you might get a report with a ton of findings, but it's important not to panic because not every vulnerability needs to be fixed immediately. You can and should use things like the CVSS score, but you also want to consider context, like whether the system's exposed to the internet or has compensating controls that make exploitation difficult or even unlikely. You can also use resources like the Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency, or CISA's, known exploited vulnerability database to determine if the vulnerability is under active exploitation. And before you roll out a patch or change configuration, you want to make sure that the finding is valid. Some scanners are going to report false positives, so it's worth checking before you spend time or risk a disruption. And when you do fix the issue, that's only one step. You should always rescan to confirm that the finding's been resolved. This helps close the loop and gives you an audit trail for compliance or any necessary internal reporting. You should also make sure that the scanner's pulling the latest vulnerability definitions and software updates. An outdated scanner is not going to catch new findings, and it defeats the whole purpose. Software vendors are constantly discovering and patching new vulnerabilities in their software. Even giants like Microsoft, who releases security patches on the second Tuesday of every month, known as Patch Tuesday. Other vendors often coordinate releases around the same time, though some, like Google, may push critical updates to their software as needed. When used properly, vulnerability scanners give you valuable insight into your risk posture, but only if they're part of a larger process that includes validation, prioritization, and follow-up. So that's what vulnerability scanners are. Automated tools that help you find weaknesses before attackers do. They're not a perfect solution, but they do give you critical visibility into your environment and a head start on reducing risk. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel or checking out one of the other videos on screen. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.